Now that we know what are bodies, what are components, and what is the top-down design approach of Fusion 360, now is the time to understand how to create joints. The assembly making process of Fusion 360 will be explained very comprehensively in the coming lectures, but the very first thing that you need to learn is to create joints. Now for that we are having these four components over here. Now the very first step in any assembly making process is to ground any one of these components. To ground any component, you have to just right click and you have to ground it. The reason behind the same is, with this grounded component, we can have a relative positioning for all the joint making process. Now, there are two types of joints in Fusion 360. One is a simpler joint, the shortcut for the same is J in the keyboard, and another one is as built joint, the shortcut for the same is Shift plus J. Let's understand the simpler joint first. For this, we can go to this joint over here if it is there in your case, in your software, or you can simply go to assemble and go to joint, or just use the keyboard shortcut J. Now as soon as we click here, you will see the grounded component is having a wireframe like structure and all the other components are highlighted. As soon as I hover the mouse over any of the component, you will see an icon is being made. This particular icon is what we call a joint origin. And this joint origin specifies that this particular part of the component will go to another component. So let's select this particular point on this face of this particular component. You can also select this edge and it will automatically trace to the center. Let's select this. And now with logical reasoning, you can tell that this will go inside of this. If I'm selecting this edge, it's not the inside, it's actually the outside of the hole. So we have to be very vigilant for providing the joint origin. This is the second joint origin we are going to use for one particular joint. So for this, let's select this and you will see that the first component will automatically track to here. As soon as the position is defined, you can provide the motion now. Now in this, we are having lots of options, lots of joints basically. First is the rigid one, and you can animate or you can preview the joint motion from here. Second is revolute. Here you can rotate the joint in any axis, let's say it's X or Y or Z. And even you can make it custom and you can select any of the surface. Let's deselect and select another one. And the joint will behave as per the selection of the surface. Let it be Z axis only. Then we have slider, cylindrical, pin slot, planar and ball. So for this particular joint, we are good with revolute only. So let it be. Now here, the rigid, revolute and slider joints will be explained in basic assembly section. Cylindrical, pin slot and planar joints will be explained in intermediate assembly section. And lastly, the ball joint will be explained in advanced assembly. So we are going to have different practice exercises or multiple practice exercises for each and every joints in the coming lectures. Now as soon as you are satisfied with the position and the motion of the joint, you can click on OK. And then you can see this icon is being made over the joint. We will have different type of icons for different kind of joints that you will get to know gradually as you move on or progress in the course. So for revolute, this flag like icon is being made. When we double click on this icon, we can change the orientation. Let's say I'm just rotating it by 180 degrees. Just click on enter. And then if you want it to revert back to the original position, you can always click on revert position over here and it will be reverted back to the original position. But if you want that the rotation that we have provided, let's provide a 90-degree rotation this time. Now if you want the rotation that you have provided or the new orientation that you have provided to be the default orientation moving forward, then just click on enter and you can click on capture position. Now let's say I'm again making any changes and I am reverting the position. It will revert back to the new captured position. This is the beauty of Fusion 360. Moving forward, we need this particular pin to go inside this hole. Now for this, we can again invoke the joint command and we can provide the joint origin as the center of this pin. But for providing joint origin to this base component, which is a grounded one, we are not finding any prominent point to snap, or basically a prominent point to provide the second joint origin for the joint. For this, what we can do, we can select this inside area of the hole and you can see the center of this particular component is highlighted where we can fit the pin. But we cannot go over there just by hovering the mouse. So what we can do, we can select the inner portion just by hovering the mouse over there, and you can press and hold Control or Command in case of Mac users, and then you can just hover the mouse to that point and left click. Let the motion be rigid only and click on OK. So this was all about the simpler joint. Now is the time to create a as-built joint. Now for as-built joint, you need to have one component made over another component and it is already fixated at a point. That means position is already defined and you have to provide motion only. In these two cases, position was not defined. This pin was outside. This number one component was also outside, and then we have provided the position. But in case of as-built joint, position has to be defined earlier. That means, let's say we have created this second component over this first component. So for as-built joint, go to assemble, click on as-built joint, or you can use the keyboard shortcut Shift+J. And then you have to simply select the component anywhere. Let's select this component and then select this component. And then you have to provide the joint type. It can be rigid, revolute, cylindrical, slider. All the joint types will be available just like the simpler joint. And then you have to snap to one particular point. Let's snap to this point inside. And it will also have the same effect or the same outcome as the simpler joint. But in my opinion, using this joint, simpler joint, is more effective, because with as-built joint we are not providing any position, we are just providing motion. So it takes away the essence of assembly making process. That's why I have used lesser as-built joints in this course itself. I have used the simpler joint only because this is more down to earth and practical approach of assembly making. But you don't have to worry. I have covered a lecture dedicated to as-built joint with a cam and follower mechanism. You can also replicate all the assemblies that I am making with as-built joint if you are comfortable with it. Thank you so much.